True scary hotel horror stories. Creepy vacation encounter. The hotel I work at has this old legend floating around about it being haunted. Among all the eerie stories, there's one spirit everyone knows about, the High Lady. She's said to be a middle-aged woman, very polite, and mostly just looking for some attention. If you've been here long enough, she might even call your name, like, "Hey, Lucas." If not, she'll just say a general hi. Most of us don't think much of it, and just say hi back. During the last closure, my boss decided to stick around to keep things running smoothly. Now, he's never been one to believe in ghosts, but something happened that really shook him. One night, while heading to the bar to grab coffee, he heard a woman's voice yell, "What are you doing?" He always laughed off the idea of ghosts here, but after that, he admitted maybe we weren't just telling tall tales. At the team meeting when we reopened, his tone had completely changed. He'd always joked about the place, but after that night, he was a bit more reserved. The cafe area, especially when it's closed, has this strange vibe that's hard to ignore. It feels like you've walked into a wall of anger, like someone's silently screaming at you. It's even worse in the back kitchen. The tension feels like it's trailing right behind you. But the weirdest thing? The moment you reach the basement stairs, all that anger just disappears. It's like walking through an invisible barrier. The journey to the office upstairs is another eerie experience. To get there, you have to cross through a conference room, and a lot of us have felt like we're being watched. It's like someone's sitting in the corner, just staring. But the moment you step into the office, it's like the feeling vanishes. It's as if the ghost doesn't want to enter. The bathrooms have their own playful spirit. This one loves messing with us, flushing toilets, turning on faucets at random. We even got all new dispensers last year from a contractor, but still, paper towels will shoot out by themselves, as if the ghost is still having fun with us. One of my coworkers actually thanks it when she gets one, especially if it happens while she's in a stall. The hotel itself, which is a separate building with only a few rooms, has its own share of oddities. Guests and staff have reported being tapped or shoved, hearing kids running and laughing down the halls, and even finding beds all messed up after housekeeping has already cleaned them. The TVs? They turn on by themselves. The creepiest thing I've heard, though, happened with two of our managers. They both got phone calls from a specific room. When they picked up, all they could hear was what sounded like an old-timey radio broadcast. But when they checked the room, it was completely empty. It's not scary enough to make me quit, but it's definitely unsettling. Every shift feels like stepping into another world where things are never quite what they seem. When I was 22, something happened that still haunts me to this day. It all started with a stupid argument with my girlfriend. We were walking around the outlet mall when she accused me of checking out another girl's figure. I tried to explain, telling her I'd just turned my head to pop my neck, but she wasn't buying it. Things escalated fast, and eventually, I told her I was going to crash somewhere else for the night to cool down. I packed a small duffel bag, grabbed my keys, and left without saying another word. I booked a room at a chain hotel just off the main road. It wasn't anything fancy, just a standard room on the second floor with a big window overlooking the indoor pool. I checked in, went up, and turned on the TV, trying to drown out the silence in my head. I flipped through channels for a while before landing on some late-night comedy. After a couple of hours, I turned the TV off, crawled into the stiff hotel sheets, and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a faint knocking. It sounded like it was coming from the window facing the pool. Still groggy, I sat up, my head throbbing from the stress of the argument earlier. The heavy curtains were drawn, so I couldn't see anything right away. For a moment, I wondered if it was just another guest or some kid messing around. But there was something about the rhythm of the knocking that felt deliberate. I flicked on the small lamp beside the bed, casting a weak light over the room, and that's when I saw it. A dark shape standing just outside the glass. At first, I thought it was just a shadow from the pool lights, but then it moved. Slowly, it raised its arm, and I froze, realizing what it was holding, a knife. Clear as day, in the dim reflection, I could see the outline of it. My heart slammed into my chest. I bolted out of bed, grabbing my phone, wallet, car keys, and room key. I threw on my sneakers and hoodie, not even bothering with pants. Every second felt like it mattered, so I ran out the side door of the room in nothing but my underwear. Picture it, me, sprinting through the dimly lit stairwell, 3 flights down, then out the hotel's main entrance, looking like a total lunatic. I didn't care. I just needed to get to my car. I hopped in, locked the doors, and peeled out of there, driving like my life depended on it. I didn't go home. I couldn't face her, not like this. Instead, I just drove. No music, no distractions, just the hum of the engine and the occasional streetlight passing by. After about 45 minutes of aimless driving, my nerves started to calm down, and something in me told me to go back. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I needed to prove to myself that what I saw wasn't real. When I got back to the hotel, everything was eerily quiet. I crept into my room, my shoes barely making a sound on the carpet. The lamp was still on, casting a warm glow over the room, but the figure, the shadow, was gone. I double-checked everything. Nothing was taken, no glass was shattered, and the door to the pool area was still locked. It was like the whole thing hadn't even happened. I stayed in the room for a while, trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Eventually, I got dressed properly and headed downstairs for the continental breakfast. The place was almost empty, and I ate in silence, replaying the night's events in my head. A few hours later, I went to the front desk to check out. Before leaving, I decided to mention what had happened to the young woman working there. She listened carefully, her expression turning serious as I described the figure with the knife. When I finished, she said she'd check the security cameras when she got back. A little while later, she came back, looking pale. She told me the footage showed a man, maybe in his late 40s or early 50s, standing at the door to my room. He had stringy, greasy hair and a scraggly beard, and in his hand, a steak knife. He didn't move for nearly 10 minutes, just stood there before walking away. Hearing that made my stomach drop. I drove home after that, told my girlfriend everything, and we patched things up. But I still can't get that image out of my head. One thing's for sure, I'm never stepping foot in that hotel again. I've been working at a family-run hotel for almost 6 years now. We're Story 3, known as the top-rated spot in our small city, and I take a lot of pride in that. My main job is housekeeping, but I've also filled in at the front desk when needed. Honestly, I enjoy my job, and my bosses have always been good to me, which I know is rare these days. As a housekeeper, though, you see some pretty strange things. Once, I walked into a room where someone had somehow sneaked in a dog, a kitten, and even a chicken, despite our strict no-pet policy. Then, there was the room I cleaned one afternoon. It had tripods set up around the bed, professional camera equipment everywhere, and some bizarre items, like a giant pacifier and oversized kid-sized diapers. The couple staying there couldn't have been older than 22. There was also that time we had to call the cops because we found meth and a stash of guns hidden in a guest's room. But today was different. It wasn't just weird, it was downright terrifying. I was cleaning a room that had already been checked out when a guest from the room next door stopped me by my cart. He'd been staying for a few days and told me I could clean his room while he went down for breakfast. Perfect. I love getting a jump on occupied rooms. It helps the laundry team stay ahead when we send stuff down quicker, so I headed to his room. I propped the door open with a wedge, like we always do, and immediately noticed something odd. There were about 15 prescription bottles lined up on one of the beds. Next to them were insulin pens and syringes. I got curious and took a closer look. Most of the bottles were diabetes meds, and the rest were for cholesterol. It was strange seeing so many bottles for the same 2 prescriptions, but whatever. People have their quirks. While I was making the bed, I noticed that some of the sheets were badly stained. Ugh. I groaned, knowing I'd need to do a full linen change instead of just smoothing everything out. So, I left to grab fresh bedding and came back. When I re-entered the room, I propped the door open again and set the clean linens on the desk chair. That's when something caught my eye. On the TV stand, there were 2 notes. One word stood out immediately: kill. I froze, the clean sheets slipping from my hands as I stepped closer. The first note felt like a punch to the gut. You don't have to forgive her. Just don't kill her. We're here to take my money and booze away from you. Stop thinking about killing her and you, and we'll get out of this alive. My pulse raced, and I could feel the blood drain from my face. I turned my attention to the second note, which at first glance seemed like a disorganized to-do list. But as I read further, a deep unease settled over me. Pray and wash. Apply for Medicare and submission. Children. Heal the soul. Check bank card. Inheritance. Savings. Kauai. Population 10,500. Matt, Montana. Judgment Day is near. Did you tell Mom what I said? How did Bev find my address? I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I stepped back. The words weren't just strange, they were alarming. My gut was screaming that I didn't belong in that room anymore. I quickly pulled out my phone and took photos of the notes. There was no way I was cleaning this room, and I needed to show my boss why. As I closed the door, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Turning around, I saw the guest walking toward me, only about 10 feet away. My stomach dropped, but I forced a smile and quickly blurted out, "Oh, I forgot some supplies. I'll be back in a bit." Without waiting for a response, I made a beeline for the elevator. By sheer luck, our maintenance guy was waiting there, fiddling with his tool belt. When I reached him, I leaned in and whispered what I'd found. He must have noticed how shaken I was because he immediately straightened up and said he'd ride down with me. When we reached the ground floor, I went straight to my boss, barely able to keep my voice steady. I told her everything and showed her the pictures. She didn't say a word as she looked at them. Her face drained of color, and she excused herself to head to the front desk. She asked the general manager to step into the office. After a quiet but intense conversation, they decided the guest needed to leave immediately. Our maintenance guy accompanied her to the room to deliver the news. The guest was given 1 hour to pack up and leave the hotel with strict instructions never to return. I stayed in the laundry room, trying to calm the shaky feeling in my chest. A short while later, my boss came back upstairs with me to keep an eye on things until the guest was officially gone. Even now, I don't know who Bev is or why this man couldn't forgive someone, but I'm certain of one thing. Room 422? Let's never cross paths again. A couple of years ago, my dad and I were driving through Nevada on our way to visit a college I was considering in Reno. It was late in the evening when we decided to stop at this small roadside motel just outside of Carson City. The place looked like it belonged in an old movie rustic, with faded wooden signs and a few antiques scattered around the lobby. It didn't look too bad, and we were both exhausted, so we decided to check in for the night. The room was simple but clean, with 2 twin beds and an old, boxy TV. I had barely fallen asleep when I was suddenly jolted awake, my heart racing. There was a fire of anger burning through me But it wasn't the normal kind of anger. It felt primal, like I needed to fight someone right then and there. My eyes darted to the door, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure, tall and thin, standing perfectly still. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine. It reminded me of something straight out of a nightmare, a cross between a scarecrow and a ghost. I gasped loudly, and it startled my dad awake. He was closer to the door, sitting up groggily, asking me what was wrong. Embarrassed, I mumbled something about a bad dream and tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen something real. Glancing at the alarm clock on the nightstand, I noticed it was exactly 3:14 a.m. I tried to convince myself it was just shadows playing tricks on me, but I couldn't get back to sleep, my mind racing uneasily. The next morning, as we were getting back on the road, my dad brought it up. "Did you see something strange last night?" he asked. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to tell him everything. To my shock, he nodded slowly and said, "I thought I saw a man wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat standing near the door when you suddenly jumped out of bed. It seemed weird, but I figured it was just part of your dream." Hearing that from him made my skin crawl. My dad isn't the kind of person who believes in ghosts or anything supernatural, so for him to admit seeing something felt even more unsettling. That little motel, with its old furniture and eerie silence, has stayed stuck in my memory. I can't explain what happened, but I know I wasn't imagining it. Something about that place felt off, like the past was still alive, watching us. My 19th birthday, meant to be a fun casino getaway with my friends Matt, Leah, and Jade, took a terrifying turn. We'd spend hours enjoying the slots, and around 4 a.m., back in our shared hotel room, we were jolted awake by a relentless, violent knocking on the door. The heavy, urgent banging shattered the quiet night. No one wanted to answer, but the knocking persisted, louder and more insistent. Finally, Jade peered through the peephole. She reported a middle-aged man in a worn bathrobe standing outside. "What do you want?" "It's 4 a.m., she called through the door, her voice low but firm. The man replied in a raspy voice, claiming to be from housekeeping. Instantly, alarm bells rang in my head. I looked through the peephole myself. His posture was stiff and unnatural, and he looked completely out of place. "We're fine, thanks," I said, trying to sound calm. He didn't leave. Instead, the knocking stopped, replaced by a faint scratching sound. "We don't need anything," I repeated, my voice firmer. "You're wearing a robe. You're clearly not a housekeeper." He didn't deny it. His expression darkened, and he leaned closer to the door. "Let me in," he hissed, his voice low and threatening, "or I'll break this damn door down." The air in the room thickened with tension. Leah stepped forward, her voice steady. "You need to leave now, or I'm calling the front desk." He snapped, his voice rising in rage. "I've got a gun. Open this door, or I'll shoot every one of you." Matt immediately moved to the door. "Back off. If you don't get out of here, I'm calling the cops." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the man erupted. He began kicking the door, each blow louder, screaming like a madman. The sound echoed through the hallway, shaking the walls and our nerves. Jade frantically dialed the front desk, while Matt called the police. It felt like an eternity, but the police arrived quickly. They wrestled the man to the ground as he cursed and thrashed, his face twisted in a demonic fury. They informed us he was wanted for breaking and entering and was a repeat offender. As they dragged him away, he glared at us with such intensity it felt like he was trying to burn holes through the door. We later learned he was banned from the casino and hotel for life. We packed our bags and left that morning, vowing never to return. The memory of that night still haunts me, a dark shadow that refuses to fade. I used to work at an upscale hotel called Rockwell Manor, a place renowned in Pennsylvania as the area's most luxurious spot. The hotel had a dark history tied to the Rockwell brothers, two men whose story ended in tragedy. One brother killed the other. The house where this occurred had been turned into a museum, with the bloodstains from the crime left on the floor as a grim reminder of the past. I never put much stock in ghosts or the supernatural, but something happened that made me rethink everything. One afternoon, while prepping for dinner service in the kitchen, a man walked in. He didn't say a word, just stood there, staring off into space. I asked if he needed anything, but he didn't respond, nor did he acknowledge me. It felt unnerving, like something wasn't quite right. I decided to step out and grab a coworker, hoping they could make sense of it, but when we returned, he was gone. No sound, no footsteps, nothing. He had vanished without a trace. A few weeks later, I decided to visit the museum after my shift. As I wandered through the dimly lit rooms, I came across a large portrait on one of the walls. My heart sank when I saw it. There was the man, the same one I had seen in the kitchen. His face, his vacant expression, the piercing eyes. It was unmistakable. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was him. Driven by curiosity, I searched the museum for more images, hoping to find something that would explain the strange encounter, perhaps a sign that I had imagined it all. But the more I looked, the more I found. Every photo, every portrait confirmed that the man I'd seen was real and tied to the history of the place. People had always whispered that Rockwell Manor was haunted, and for the first time, I began to believe those stories. My skepticism was slipping away, and with each passing day, I felt like I was getting closer to uncovering something I wasn't prepared for. My wife and I decided to treat ourselves a little and booked a night at a hotel in Austin. It was one of those rare splurges since we usually stick to a tight budget. The price was surprisingly low, but a few perks, like room service and the minibar, weren't included. We didn't mind though. Instead of worrying about extras, we just ordered some sandwiches through Uber Eats around 11 p.m. I stepped outside to pick up the order and have a smoke while I waited. I stood to the side of the main entrance to stay out of the way, but still within sight of the front doors. The streets were almost completely empty, eerily quiet. I got the food and lingered to finish my cigarette when a man appeared out of nowhere. He was dressed sharply in a suit, but what threw me off was the animal mask he was wearing, a camel of all things. He asked if I could spare a cigarette. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something about him unsettled me. His voice didn't match his appearance. It sounded off, like it didn't belong to the man standing in front of me. Still, I handed him a cigarette, hoping he'd just move on. But instead, he stayed. He stepped closer, too close, and asked if I could share some of the food I was holding. I tried to be polite, explaining that the food was just for me and my wife, nothing extra. But he wouldn't back off. He leaned in so close that the paper bag crinkled against his body, leaving me no space to step away. His voice lowered, sharp with insistence, as he demanded that I give him something. It felt more like a command than a request. I told him no, firmly this time, but his mood shifted instantly. He didn't shout, but his tone grew cold, edged with a menace that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Then he asked for my lighter. Without thinking, I handed it to him, just wanting the encounter to end. But instead of walking away, he accused me of lying about the food. His words didn't make sense, but the way he said them froze me in place. He asked if I worked nearby, and when I said I was staying at the hotel, he pressed for details. What hotel? Which room? Panic started crawling up my throat. I pointed vaguely at the building behind me, hoping that would satisfy him. but his eyes never left me. It felt like he was waiting for something, but I was too terrified to figure out what. Then he leaned even closer, his breath brushing my skin as he asked in a harsh tone, "So you're staying here?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady, but the whole time, he kept accusing me of lying about the food. His body was pressing in on mine now, and I could barely breathe. His face was just inches from mine, and the bag was crinkling between us as I clutched it to my chest. That's when he said it. "So, you're here with your boyfriend?" I quickly corrected him, saying husband, and saw him glance at my wedding ring. Instinct screamed at me to create space, so I started edging toward the back door, about 50 feet away. I told myself not to show fear, hoping it would make things less tense, but my legs were shaking, and the whole situation felt suffocating. His cigarette was still burning, and he still hadn't returned my lighter. Usually, people give it back right away. Instead, he kept pressing, repeating his demand for food, and I just wanted him to leave. Finally, I snapped. I demanded my lighter back, but it only seemed to anger him. He muttered something under his breath, gripping the lighter tightly before shoving it back into my hand. The relief didn't last long. The next thing I knew, he grabbed both of my arms, his fingers digging painfully into my skin. Panic surged through me as I twisted, using my elbow to pound on the glass door behind me. The receptionist sat inside, either oblivious or ignoring the noise. I screamed, louder this time, tears streaming down my face. I kept thinking, someone has to help me. This can't be happening. But no one came. My mind wasn't thinking clearly anymore. It was just repeating danger, run, danger, run. My cries only seemed to make him angrier. He tightened his grip and jerked me closer. That's when something finally broke the moment. My phone buzzed. It was my mom calling. I had earbuds under my hood, so he couldn't see them. Without thinking, I answered and started wailing into the mic. "He's trying to hurt me. He's trying to hurt me." My voice was nothing more than frantic sobs. For a split second, the man froze, startled. He loosened his grip just enough for me to pull free. I didn't look back. I just ran, sobbing, shaking, straight to the hotel doors. By the time I made it to my room, I was still crying, clutching my phone to my ear as my mom tried to calm me down. She kept telling me not to go outside again, not for any reason. My husband held me close, his voice soft and comforting as he asked me to explain what had happened. I tried, but I was so shaken that I couldn't get the words out right. It took a while before I could tell him everything, gasping through my sobs. Later that night, around 1 a.m., I saw him again. I was standing by one of the tall ashtrays near the hotel's front entrance, but this time, the security guard was with me. The man stood just outside on the sidewalk, watching us through the glass. My stomach churned. Was he waiting for me? I quickly ducked inside, still trembling. That same night, another person approached me for a cigarette, a kind-looking woman. She thanked me politely and must have noticed my distress because she asked if I was okay. I ended up telling her what happened. She nodded solemnly and said, "That's why I carry this." She pulled a small handgun from her purse. Just in case. I don't know if I'll ever forget her words. I think it's time I get one for myself. This can't happen again. There used to be an old, abandoned hotel in a quiet town called Edgefield, Oregon. Back in its prime, it was a popular spot, a theater and hotel rolled into one, where wealthy guests would stay between the late 1800s and early 1900s. But for decades now, it's been empty, forgotten, decaying in silence. One night, my cousin and a few of his friends decided to sneak in and explore. The stories he came back with still give me chills. As soon as they stepped through the broken front doors, it felt like the air changed. It was so quiet that every footstep they took echoed through the empty hallways, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The shadows seemed deeper than they should have been, like they were hiding something. The first floor was just the usual: broken furniture, smashed windows, the remnants of a once grand place now reduced to junk. But as they climbed higher, things started to get weird. Strange symbols were painted on the walls. Some looked like they belonged in some dark, twisted ritual. And when they reached the top floor, where the old theater once stood, they found something that made their blood run cold: a massive pentagram drawn right in the middle of the room. The atmosphere was thick, suffocating. The place felt like it was pressing down on them, the air itself heavy with something they couldn't understand. My cousin swears he could feel eyes on him, but the room was empty. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from above them. Their hearts dropped. There shouldn't have been anyone else there. Despite the fear clawing at them, they pressed on, curiosity overtaking terror. Some of the doors on the upper floors wouldn't budge. They were either locked from the inside or jammed shut by the weight of time itself. It was as if the building was trying to keep them out. When they finally decided to head back down, that's when the real nightmare began. A scream as sharp, guttural, cut through the silence. It wasn't a normal scream. It sounded wrong, almost inhuman. It came from a room they had just passed. My cousin said they froze for a second, debating whether to look or just run. Before they could decide, she appeared. She wasn't dressed, just a filthy, wild woman with tangled hair that hung in clumps around her face. Her eyes gleamed with something unnatural, and she was muttering, screeching as she lunged at rats scurrying across the floor. They didn't wait to see what she'd do next. Without a second thought, they bolted. They sprinted down the stairs, dodging broken railings and piles of debris, her screeching laughter echoing behind them. When they finally made it outside, they turned back, only to see her standing in the doorway, still screaming, her twisted form trying to chase them off. They didn't stop running until they were blocks away. Even now, my cousin can't tell the story without his hands shaking. It's like that night followed him home, its weight lingering, never quite letting go. A couple of years ago, I was staying at a motel with my family. My brother, who lived nearby, often had friends drop by. One evening, I bumped into a few of them while they were chatting, and there was a woman I didn't recognize. She casually said, "Hey," and then awkwardly explained, "Oh, sorry. I just heard him say your name, so I thought I'd say hi too." It struck me as odd, but I shrugged it off. Later, I stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping to clear my head. To my surprise, the same woman approached me again, clearly eager to chat. I couldn't shake the strange vibe she gave off. She remembered my name and seemed way too friendly for someone I just met. I gave short, clipped responses, hoping she'd get the hint, but she just kept talking, rambling on and on. Out of nowhere, she invited me to her apartment. I politely declined, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. There was something off about her. "Oh, don't be like that," she said. "I'm feeling lonely and could use the company." That sent up immediate red flags in my mind. I declined again, this time more firmly. But she insisted, her tone shifting, almost pleading. "Come on, just this once," she said, like it was a favor she was owed. I walked back inside, ignoring her, but deep down, I had this gnawing feeling I'd regret it. And I was right. That night, she showed up at my door again. She was drunk, slurring her words as she rambled about how I'd let her down, though I'd never agreed to anything. Then she demanded I walk her to her room, like I owed her that much. Annoyed, I snapped back, saying I didn't owe her a thing, and slammed the door in her face. She screamed on the other side, her words a drunken blur. The next morning, I woke up to a sight that froze me in place. She was lying on the other bed in my room, like she belonged there. Panicking, I called the front desk to report it, but what they told me made my stomach drop. They thought she was staying with me and had lost her key. I explained that this woman wasn't staying with me and had broken into my room, but before I could finish the call, my mom walked in to see what the noise was about. The front desk clerk quickly realized their mistake and assured me security was on the way. Meanwhile, my mom, clearly annoyed, decided to wake the woman up. She shook her shoulder, telling her to leave. The woman, still groggy, sneered and muttered, "I'm not going anywhere, lady." My mom warned her that security was coming, but the woman just shrugged it off like it didn't matter, sitting there on the bed, mumbling something about how I owed her and how she wasn't leaving until I paid her back. The argument between them escalated, the woman's voice getting louder and nastier with each exchange. Finally, security arrived, and my mom quickly pointed them toward the woman. But even with the guards there, she refused to move. She even flipped them off. It wasn't until one of the guards mentioned calling the police that her whole demeanor changed. Her face went pale, and she dropped to the floor, grabbing at the guard's legs, sobbing hysterically. "Please no, don't call the cops. I'm on probation already." "I'll leave, I swear," she cried. Without waiting for a response, she scrambled out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Apparently, she went back to the room she was actually staying in. We stripped the sheets off the bed she'd used and tried to put the whole ordeal behind us. For a while, things seemed to settle down, but every time I crossed paths with her around the motel, she'd glare at me. Her eyes seemed to burn into my back. I learned to ignore it, rolling my eyes at her silent tantrums. Eventually, though, she was evicted. The whole complex heard the chaos as she screamed and fought with the officers who came to remove her. Out of morbid curiosity, I peeked outside to see what was going on. She was in a full-on argument with the officers when she spotted me. Her face twisted with rage, and she bolted toward me like a wild animal. Panic surged through me as I darted back into my room, locking the door behind me. That was the last I saw of her. Apparently, she was taken back to jail. I never found out what she was on probation for, and honestly, I didn't care. Part of me hopes she got the help she clearly needed, but another part of me just feels relief that she's gone. Looking back, the whole experience feels like a blur, like something out of a bad dream. Maybe I'm remembering some details wrong, it all happened so fast. But one thing's for sure, this woman was completely unhinged, and she scared the hell out of me. If there's one takeaway from all of this, it's this: trust your gut, and never underestimate the phrase stranger danger. Seriously, stay safe out there. I was staying at a quaint little inn, once a grand estate owned by a railroad tycoon in the early 1900s. My room, tucked away on the ground floor, had likely been a study or sitting room back in its heyday. The current owners, a retired couple with a warmth about them, had kept the place pristine, and it felt like stepping back in time. The inn had a comforting atmosphere, but there was an undeniable weight to it, like the house was holding secrets it couldn't share. One night, while I was deep in sleep, I suddenly woke up with my heart racing. It felt as if something had a firm grip on my ankle. It wasn't a dream, no mistaking it. It felt like fingers closing around my leg. Terrified, I shot up, fumbling for the bedside lamp. When the light finally flooded the room, I was met with nothing but an empty space. The room was eerily silent, save for the hum of the radiator. But the unease lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone had been there. Sleep was out of the question after that. I paced the room for a while, trying to calm my nerves, before deciding to leave and wait out the night in the kitchen, hoping dawn would come sooner. By 4:30 a.m., just as the first hints of sunlight crept through the curtains, the phone in the hallway rang. It was an old landline, the kind with a dusty answering machine that still had a mechanical hum to it. A frail, trembling voice filled the room. A woman was pleading for her daughter to come to her side at the nearby hospice. The message was urgent, full of heartbreak. I felt my stomach twist in discomfort. The innkeepers lived in a separate part of the house, far from where I was staying, and I knew they probably wouldn't hear the call. My heart pounded as I made my way to their door, knocking until they woke up. The woman rushed out to be with her mother, leaving me alone in the stillness of the house, the silence now even heavier than before. The next day, I learned that her mother had passed away shortly after they shared those final moments together. But what shook me the most wasn't just the death, it was something that happened months later when I returned to the inn. While I was reminiscing with the owners about that strange night, they told me something unsettling. The night after her mother's funeral, a decorative sculpture in the dining room had started to vibrate on its own. No one had been near it, and yet it swayed gently, its tiny chimes ringing as if touched by invisible hands. That story stuck with me long after I left. Since then, I've never stayed on the ground floor again. I don't think I could bear whatever still lingers in the shadows of that old house, holding on to its memories and the souls who've crossed its path. It was my 19th birthday, and to celebrate, my 3 closest friends and I decided to take a trip to Chicago. To give some context, 2 of my friends, Chloe and Mia, didn't exactly get along, and Emily, the third, had been my best friend for years and still is. My birthday falls in January, so the cold was brutal during our trip. We all squeezed into a small hotel room, but I can't for the life of me remember the name of the place anymore. One night, I was feeling absolutely wiped out, so I decided to head back to the hotel early. I didn't want to ruin anyone's fun, though, so I told them to keep enjoying the club while I went back to relax. I called my boyfriend at the time, mainly to unwind, but I also needed a break. Chloe and Mia had been bickering all day, nothing major, just little jabs and snarky comments. Their personalities clashed, and I hated being stuck in the middle of their drama. It was wearing me out. So there I was, curled up on the bed, chatting with my boyfriend, when about 20 minutes into the call, I got another incoming call. It was Mia, and she sounded upset, her voice shaky with tears. Mia had a flair for the dramatic, but hearing her this distressed made me worry. The conversation went something like this. "Mia, what's wrong? Chloe is such a nightmare. I can't stand her. Are you okay? I'm coming back to the room. She said something snarky in the Uber, and I've just had enough. I'm heading back now. All right, just be careful. How long until you're here?" "About 10 minutes. I'm getting in the car now." "Okay, I'll see you soon. We can talk when you get here." After hanging up with Mia, I told my boyfriend I had to go, explaining I needed to be there for her. True to her word, Mia showed up a few minutes later. She filled me in on the fight, though I can't recall the details. It was probably something petty. We talked it over for a while, and eventually, I suggested we get some rest. It had been a long, stressful day, and I was done with the drama. About an hour later, Emily and Chloe stumbled into the room. Chloe was completely trashed, barely able to walk straight, and as soon as she saw Mia, she started yelling at her. Her words were so slurred, I couldn't understand most of what she was saying. Mia, however, stayed unusually calm, but her responses only seemed to make Chloe angrier. Chloe, in a fit of rage, kicked my bag so hard that it slammed into the wall. That was the last straw. I couldn't stand it anymore. Being mad is one thing, but trying to wreck someone else's stuff? Absolutely not. I decided I couldn't stay in that toxic environment a second longer. One of my close friends who hadn't been able to join us had a cousin living in Evanston, and her family treated me like one of their own. I texted her, explained the situation, and asked if I could crash there for the night. She replied instantly, telling me to come over. I grabbed my bag and headed for the elevator. It was taking forever, and I ended up waiting in the dimly lit hallway. Out of nowhere, Mia came rushing out of the room. "I'm coming with you," she shouted. "No, Mia, I need to be alone," I replied, feeling guilty for ruining my birthday. "I'm really sorry for dragging you into this." "Please let me come," she pleaded. "I can't stay with Chloe. She's unbearable right now." I sighed. "Fine, whatever. Just hurry up." The elevator finally arrived, and we rode down in uncomfortable silence. It was almost 2 a.m., and surprisingly, the hotel lobby was almost empty. For New York City, that was strange. There was only one guy behind the front desk and another staff member hanging around by the entrance. When we stepped outside, the freezing air hit us. I didn't want to wait around for a cab, so I went up to the desk clerk and asked if he could hail one for me. He waved over the other employee. This guy was tall, easily over 6 feet, with a buzz cut so short his scalp was visible. He had a solid, stocky build, but what stood out most were his icy blue eyes. They weren't warm or kind. They were sharp, unsettling, like he could see straight through you. Even before he spoke, something felt off about him. "Where are you heading?" he asked, his voice thick with a Russian accent. His tone was cold, flat, and it sent a chill down my spine. Queens," I stammered. "We're going to Queens." He paused for a moment, then stepped closer. He was towering over me now, leaning in so close that if he moved another inch, our faces would have touched. "Is it just the two of you?" he asked slowly, his words deliberate. "Yeah, just us," I said, trying to step back, but he didn't move. He kept his cold blue eyes locked on mine. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds, but it felt like hours. Then, suddenly, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, more like he knew something I didn't. My stomach twisted, and I felt rooted to the spot. Something about him screamed danger. I glanced at Mia, and her wide eyes told me she felt the same. It was like she was silently begging me to notice how wrong everything about this situation felt. Finally, he stepped back. "Wait here," he said, pulling out his phone and starting to speak in Russian. I didn't understand a word, but his piercing blue eyes never left us. I felt trapped. My mind raced with possibilities. Should we run? Would it even help? My eyes darted to the glass doors at the hotel's entrance, praying for a cab to appear. After what felt like an eternity, he hung up and said calmly, "Someone's coming. Don't worry." Minutes later, another man walked in. He wasn't dressed like any of the staff, no uniform, nothing professional. That was the moment every instinct I had screamed for us to get out. The two men spoke in Russian, nodding occasionally and glancing at us. The second man's gaze was just as unsettling. Then, the blue-eyed man turned to us. "He'll take you where you need to go," he said. "Wait, what?" I stammered. "Go with him," he repeated. His voice was steady and cold. "He will take you." Before I could respond, I caught sight of something through the glass doors, a real cab, slowly inching down the street. My heart leapt. "It's okay," I blurted, grabbing Mia's hand. "There's a cab right there. We'll just take that. Thanks anyway." Without waiting for a response, I bolted for the doors, dragging Mia behind me. My pulse was pounding in my ears as we threw ourselves into the back seat of the cab. Once the doors slammed shut, we both let out shaky breaths. "Did that just happen?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, still catching my breath. That guy, something was so wrong about him. We both agreed. In that moment, those men gave off a vibe that wasn't just creepy, it was dangerous. The terrifying thought that kept circling in my mind was that they might have been part of a human trafficking ring. As the cab pulled away, I silently thanked the universe for its perfect timing. That cab had saved us from whatever would have happened if we had stayed. Even now, years later, I think back on that night. I've been to New York countless times since, and not once has a hotel staff member ever offered to personally take me anywhere. I don't know where those men had planned to take us, but I know it wouldn't have been anywhere safe. So, creepy Russian guys at the hotel that night? Let's never cross paths again. I work at a mid-sized hotel, built in 2007. While the building itself is relatively new, the land it's on has a much darker and richer history. From 1885 to 2002, the site was home to an ornate old theater, which was later transformed into a nightclub in the 1970s before it shut down in the early 1990s. When I started working here last December, I immediately heard whispers from coworkers about the place possibly being haunted. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I hadn't experienced anything strange myself, aside from two things that stuck with me. Down in the basement, there's a cold spot that no one can explain, and occasionally, guests complain about their TVs turning on by themselves. On the first floor, there's another oddity, a spot where the air feels heavy, almost like you're underwater, muffled and suffocating. But I never sensed anything negative or threatening, so I just chalked it up to quirks of the building. That was until last week, when something happened that I can't shake off. While reviewing security footage, I noticed something strange. A shadowy figure crossed the camera view. It wasn't the usual glitch or dirt on the lens, it was a clear, distinct shape. I called over a coworker to check it out, thinking it could just be a bug or some other explanation. But as we stood there, watching, the shadow moved again, right in front of the camera. It was as if something or someone was right there. It wasn't a glitch. It was unmistakably real. We both froze, unsure of what we had just seen. Then, my coworker asked me what I thought was going on. I told him about the cold spot, the underwater feeling, and how I had never felt anything threatening until now. Right after I said this, one of the radios sitting on the desk suddenly crackled to life, blasting loud static, even though no one had touched it. I quickly turned it off, but before I could say anything, my coworker gasped. He told me he felt a sharp scratch on his shoulder at the exact moment the static had started. We looked, and sure enough, there was a red mark on his skin, like something had clawed him. As if things weren't strange enough, just 2 days later, a longtime guest came to the front desk, visibly shaken. She asked to change rooms, but not because she had heard about the recent incident. She told us that strange things had been happening in her room for weeks. Her bathtub would fill with water on its own, her kettle would turn on by itself, and the worst part, her baby's bottle had slid off the nightstand, as though someone had pushed it. She was so disturbed by what had been happening that she refused to return to her room, even to collect her belongings. At this point, I don't know what to believe. But something is definitely off about this place. I can't ignore it anymore. The stories from my coworkers, the strange occurrences, the unsettling feelings, it's all becoming too much to chalk up to coincidence. I can't shake the feeling that there's something in this building, something we haven't figured out yet, and it's starting to feel a little too real for comfort. I'm 21 now, but this happened when I was 15. I was staying at a motel in Oregon with my 17-year-old sister and my mom, visiting family during summer break. One evening, my sister, for cousins, and I went swimming in the motel pool while our mothers had a ladies' night. After about 2 hours, we showered in the pool area. Everyone else returned to the room, but I stayed behind, saying I needed to do something. After dressing, I went to the vending machine to buy snacks with my pocket money. A man, probably in his early 30s, approached me from behind. He asked what I was doing, and I told him I was getting snacks for my family. He then asked if I could buy him something, claiming he'd forgotten his wallet and would pay me back. I politely declined, saying I didn't have much money. That's when things turned horrifying. He said, "Actually, I'll just take these 2 things for free. And then he grabbed my buttocks and crotch, squeezing hard. When I told him to stop, he yanked my pants down and pushed me over. He pulled my pants completely off and shoved his hand into my underwear, groping me. He forced a kiss on me. His breath was foul, like he never brushed his teeth. I screamed for help. My sister, who had wrestled throughout high school, came running. She tackled him hard, giving him a black eye and a bloody nose, and then slammed her head into his while he was on the ground. I pulled my pants back on and kicked him in the face. We told our family, and the front desk worker reviewed the security cameras and called the police. They arrested him and permanently banned him from the motel. My sister likely saved me from something much worse. I never saw that creep again. To the sick individual who assaulted me and clearly had worse intentions, I hope you rot. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.